Hey everyone, Jaya here. I'm the founder of Kurate. We're a startup community with over 700 members from across Southeast Asia. I've been doing events for over 2 years now, initially running the Singapore chapter for a global community, and Kurate was born about a year ago. In total, I've done over 25 events here in Singapore, bringing together key players within the startup ecosystem, founders, investors, tech executives, board members. The last event that we did was the Southeast Asia Founders and VCs Night in May this year. We had over 200 attendees from markets like Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, and of course the majority that are based here in Singapore. And we've come a long way from the first events that I did with like 10 or 20 folks to now where we're at. We're probably the most vibrant startup community here in Singapore. Today, what I'm going to be talking about is building a world-class tech ecosystem specific to startups. There are three main elements I want to cover. In fact, you'll find it interesting the way I've ordered it. It's pretty unconventional, especially the last one. So with that said, let's get started. The first is exits, which is actually the end of the startup journey, but I think is the most important because exits, whether that's an IPO, a traditional IPO, whether that's a SPAC, a merger, an acquisition, even secondaries for founders is great because when there's an exit event, a lot of founders are free to go around investing, to start funds, to sit on boards, to basically advise that next generation of entrepreneurs. Because what's most important in that journey is that specific know-how they learn on scaling startups as opposed to industry-specific knowledge. It's about specific to the startup journey, and that can be great for entrepreneurs to avoid a lot of the classic mistakes that a lot of us make early on in the startup journey. A lot of the early employees as well of these companies go on to start companies when they cash out on their stock, and that really creates a mature ecosystem. In fact, countries like Singapore spend a lot of effort in attracting these kind of seasoned entrepreneurs into Singapore because they know it has a ripple effect. For instance, Chris, who started the Zoogler community. The Zoogler community is a community of over 30,000 members who are ex-Googlers, and a lot of them are established entrepreneurs, are tech executives in some of the major startups and tech companies. They got Chris into Singapore, and now he's not only running Zoogler, but has also started a new company, and he's raised a lot of capital locally from here in Singapore and from regional funds. And it's like first-time founders make a lot of the same mistakes. We overinvest in product, we underinvest in distribution. A lot of the second-time founders think about distribution, GTM, scaling, channel partnerships early on. And having the right people who are seasoned entrepreneurs by your side can make a massive difference in the next generation who are building companies. So I think we're at a very interesting time in Asia right now where the ecosystem is maturing. We've seen some of the biggest startups like Property Guru, Grab. They've had their IPOs. A lot of M&As in Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines is up and coming, and it's never been a better time to be in this part of the world as these entrepreneurs go on to start funds and help the next generation. The second would be community. I would also group content in it, content and community. Whether it's a larger scale event like a fintech festival, like an Echelon, like a Switch or a Super AI, Token. These larger events are great because as a founder, you're never building a startup, at least in this part of the world, in isolation. In this part of the world, especially Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific, you are building your startups along with larger enterprises through their innovation programs, through their corporate venture arms, or even just having them as customers. You're working with governments, often leveraging grants, leveraging the kind of access they can give you to different markets. Academia for deep tech, right? You'll be collaborating with a lot of universities. And of course, other startups, more seasoned investors, exited founders, advisors, whatnot. So the ecosystem has all these different stakeholders, and larger conferences are a great way for all of these guys to come together, meet each other, drive outcomes for startups. So that's, I really believe in the power of networking, and some of the best outcomes that have happened to me can be traced back to a single interaction, single handshake that happened years ago. In fact, during my first startup back in 2018, when I was building a platform to find movies and TV shows from across multiple different streaming services, it was my first actual startup. I'd built some products before that, but this was the first actual startup. I knew nobody within the ecosystem. I had like 10 LinkedIn connections, which is like my dad and his colleagues probably. And I just showed up every day to this place called Draper Startup House, right? So it's a plug for them because they are around in different countries and they host startup events throughout the week. And I used to just show up there every day, and within a few months, I knew a lot of established entrepreneurs, and again, they helped me avoid a lot of the classic mistakes that most entrepreneurs make, right? That's the role that I think community and content play within any thriving startup ecosystem. The last aspect is most important because I intentionally put this last. The last is capital. You might think that capital should come first. No, I believe capital is the third. In fact, the first two are the most important ingredients. Capital is only there to amplify the effects of the first two. A lot of founders, especially first-time founders, get obsessed about raising capital. It's seen as a victory already to raise capital. It's not. In fact, the moment you do, the time's ticking. You're expected to have an exit within 7 to 10 years. And a lot of companies may not be venture backable, right? A lot of founders are building great businesses, and you're much better off getting strategic angels on board as opposed to raising venture capital, because there's a very specific kind of business that venture capital is designed for, which is hyper scalable software companies. And unless you're building something like that, it may not even be a fit. But provided that you are raising capital from the right sources also matters. In fact, as I mentioned at the first point, we're seeing a lot of established entrepreneurs right now start their funds, start angel syndicates, and those can be great platforms for you to raise capital from. So capital is the third most interesting element, which will just propel the other two and help founders achieve their outcomes faster. There are so many more elements that we could cover, from attracting the right talent, the capital structures in the legal institutions in every market, the risk-taking culture, partnerships, innovation programs. But these three, I think, are the most crucial elements in building a thriving world-class tech and startup ecosystem. With that said, excited for the chat we're doing with Colin afterwards, and thank you for listening.